good afternoon to everyone today. I know it's the second session. We've already had a lot of insights, but I hope we're going to keep them coming. And this session, I think, is very, very relevant for a lot of marketers, a lot of CRM people, a lot of product people as well, because it's all about retention. So the topic for this session is leveraging user insights to boost user retention. So, modern growth teams and product teams, we look at a lot of data, we consume a lot of data. Sometimes we get lost in what is the data and what are the user paths we have to see in order to ensure that we keep those customers coming back to our platform. So to discuss that and more today, we have some amazing panelists. I think one person sort of already talked about. Joshua has just got the vaccine. I'm not going to take much time. I'm quickly going to start the introduction. It'll be great if you guys can just help me with that itself. Rajeshwari, it'll be great if you can start with a quick intro about you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rajeshwari, and I'm from Malaysia. I'm representing U Mobile here, and I'm part of the innovation team from the business. Yeah. So
thanks, Rajeshwari.
Yeah.
Great, Vineeth, if you can also give us a quick hi.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Arijit and MoEngage for having us here. I'm representing the AsianParent. We are the Southeast Asia's largest parenting community, and I'm the head of marketing at AsianParent.
Thanks, Vineeth. I'm going to go to Kushal and then end it with Joshua. Kushal, up next.
Hi, all. Kushal here. I'm head of digital here at Zilingo, managing growth marketing and the marketing technology infrastructure, and happy to be part of this session.
Thanks, Kushal. Josh, will be great to hear from you as well.
Hi, everyone. Joshua here. So I'm currently at NTUC FairPrice, heading up the CRM team over there. Really happy to be here and share some of my perspectives on the topic. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the quick intro. I'm not going to take much time. I'm going to quickly start with the questions we have. So we have around 4 questions. We're going to be floating through all of you and gathering insights from you. So I'm quickly going to start with the first question. And I want to start again with Rajeshwari here. And would be great to hear your telecom perspective on this. So the first question for today is when it comes to metrics, especially engagement metrics, what are the most important engagement metrics you look at, you think need to be tracked, and the ones you always start with, the ones you always want to take off, before you start working on it?
Sure. Thanks, Arijit. Right. Okay. So from a telco perspective, right, when we start, we've always looked at the RFM model. What is the recency, or when was the last purchase they made with us? When was the last time they engaged with us, and how many times they purchased? What did they purchase? How much? What is the monetary value that they've actually purchased, and all of those? But over time now, this whole RFM model had to be changed to actually contextualize the whole digital experience now, right? So in terms of the whole digital experience today, what we have done is that to actually RFM it at every journey, at every point of it, right? So even up to the point that, today I'm responsible running a lot of campaigns, a lot of gamification campaigns I run for U Mobile today. So if you see any ads for giving away cars and all that, those are coming all from Brain Ideas. Those are all from U Mobile. We are good at doing those. A lot of games that we like to play with our consumers, because we really believe that it kind of creates that engagement. We went crazy for Pokemon for no reason. So that's what we are looking at. We just want to get people hooked up, right? So even for the games, I started even looking at the metrics of what is the games called, because what are they scoring? Well, how long are they spending to play the game? So we started even measuring that as well, because it really shows you it kind of brings you numbers of how long, what are they engaging you, why do they want to stay with you, right? So and also I think when it comes to customer journey itself, one of the very most important thing that you should be analyzing on is the spending, spending analysis. How much are they spending? What are they spending on? These are the metrics that you should be looking at, and all of those. And then it could be from an engagement point of view, some of the metrics from different channels that they're engaging you on. Are they engaging you from the web, app, and stuff? These channels. So these are some of the general metrics that I would look at. Yeah. So that's from a telco perspective.
Thanks for the insight there, especially on the gamification bit. I'm going to go over to Joshua now. So Joshua, it'll be great to hear what you guys are doing at NTUC or any experience from that.
Sure. So I guess in a traditional CRM setting, one would think about the channels that we sort of manage to be your typical marketing, EDMs, push notifications, SMS, and this could be different for different people, managing different products in the company or in a different industry. So for me, it really is about looking at what is your ultimate North Star goal that you're trying to tackle. It could be revenue, for example. Most people is revenue. And then sort of trying to understand what is the job of the channel or the medium that you're using to try and reach that goal. And along the way, how a user interacts with that channel becomes the engagement touch points that you want to really capture and pay attention to. So we all understand click-through rate, open rates, and these are all very basic things. But in a slightly different context, where it's a non-digital or maybe an omni-channel world, where in FairPrice you start to see things like digital aisles, digital screens, digital ways to pay and check out, then the job of those touch points become very different from what we are used to in a digital first world. So we really need to focus on, again, what is the job to be done. If you're trying to help someone navigate through a payment service to shortcut his checkout process in store, then we start to look at how much time he's taking. Are there any gaps along the way? Are there any friction points you want to solve? And all these really do roll up into different engagement points to pay attention to.
Okay, so basically you're saying you're trying to capture engagement points at each and every step of a user's flow or a user's journey, wherein you talked about entering the store, where all the checking out, how much time are they taking. So it's not only the North Star metric you're looking at, but you're looking at engagement metrics throughout the life cycle and throughout the journey they're taking to reach that. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, so again, I think it's important to understand how every individual channel or touch point rolls up into a bigger North Star. And with the deployment of every single touch point, there is going to be a few engagement metrics that are most meaningful towards optimizing that for the North Star goal.
Cool. Thanks a lot. That's really interesting. I'm gonna go to e-commerce now. So Kushal, will be great to hear. That is the industry everyone wants to hear from. So up to you now.
No pressure. So I think, engagement metrics, in principle, I don't think they change significantly from industries, because in the end, if you're, as Rajeshwari mentioned about RFM, so the monetary part, right? So that's there for everybody, like your orders, your revenue, GMV, and all that. But how I would like to look at this question or the engagement metric is from stakeholders' point of view. So now, if I'm answering this metric question to, let's say, my COO, I don't think he will care about the clicks that are happening on the email, right? Like he wants revenue metrics. So so it depends on the stakeholder. So now it can be as top of the funnel as, let's say, deliverability, for example, open rates. For example, on the pop-up world, somebody closed on the pop-up without clicking it. So these are like very fundamental engagement metrics. But now it doesn't matter to some stakeholders, but it matters to some stakeholders. So when you take deliverability, if your messages are not getting delivered, now whatever you do, it doesn't matter, right? So now that stakeholder who is owning the deliverability part of it Now they will have to make sure, everything is taken care of, your IP warm up, your domain health, the deliverability on different mobile devices, etc., etc. So now even that is engagement metric for me, because first time the message is showing up to them, so that need to happen. And same thing works with open rates and all those things. So the point I'm making here is, so engagement metrics, I think, need to be looked into from a context of the stakeholder, and also, as Joshua mentioned, like different stages. So every stage has its own engagement metric. Every stakeholders will want to measure their own engagement metric, and hence we'll have to focus on all those things, at least measuring that. Now, reporting to whom, what they want to see, what they want to infer, I think it's context based. Hope that answers the question.
Well, thanks a lot. Actually, that's very interesting. So it's basically like a team approval process: a marketer, an analyst, manager, and then the CEO. So different engagement metrics at every point. Clicks,
exactly.
deliverability, and at the end of it, you have to show revenue, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody gets bonus if your deliverability is 99%, but it need to happen, right, to get the orders. Yeah.
So again, it's the North Star metric we come down to. I'm going to go to Vineeth, because I kept you the last for this, because your point of view is going to be a little different here, right? Coming from Asian Parent, it's a different kind of an industry altogether. So it would be great to hear from you.
Yep. Thank you for keeping me last, Arijit. It's good to hear the perspective from our fellow panelist, and quite a learning there already. So thanks for that. So from my perspective, right, obviously, when we look at the engagement metrics, and as some of the members on the call would already know, that Asian Parent, the two properties that we own here is Asian Parent website and an app. Right. So both function in a different manner. So when you're looking at an engagement metrics for a website, it will be different as compared to an app. Today's conversation, what I'll do is I'll focus more towards the app and how we engage with our users on the app. Right. So to give you a perspective of how Asian Parents function, or how do we approach engagement, first of all, we call them interactions and activities on our platform. Right. We always look at like when you're looking at a holistic level, so-called North Star metrics. Obviously, for an app, you're always looking at DAUs and MAUs that you're bringing in. But when you talk about engagement, you're always talking about sessions, page views, sessions time per user that happens on your app. But from our business standpoint, what we also make sure we don't stop there. We actually tend to, because we know that our engagement metrics tend to vary according to the platform on which they are. Like we have highly curated pregnancy and baby tracker product, which is the most attractive product within our app. Now, a user who's engaging, and these are pretty much useful for people who are like, we also cater to different user stages, like trying to conceive on their pregnancy stage, or even parents who are who have kids up to like 6 years old. Now, if you're just before this call or just before this session started, we were talking a lot about segmentation and all, right? So keeping that in mind, it's also important to identify what kind of metrics make sense for those user segments and the tools that the user is utilizing. A pregnancy tracker user might not be using or might not be engaging similar to what a parent might be engaging with. So I always see it in that manner. To give you a few examples, what we have is like whenever we look at the usage of our pregnancy tracker, we are looking at how many people are visiting that pregnancy tracker, because there is nothing much they can do on it. But then there is further metrics that we also look at, which is how many people are clicking away from that particular tracker to the different features that we offer, like the checklist feature or the kick counter feature that is specific for a third trimester pregnant user who needs to input something, where they are counting the kicks of their kid during their third trimester. So now over here, the metrics changes because you're looking at screen views for pregnancy tracker. But when you're looking at a kick counter feature, you're looking at the input, the number of clicks or the number of inputs that you have received from the user. So that actually, if that summarizes, we always look at data points accordingly. And then our business intelligence team actually does a great job of helping us to create these dashboards, which make sure that we are monitoring these closely. changes and trends around these help us to look at our North Star metric and say if we are progressing or if there is a decline that we are seeing for our North Star metrics like DAU, MAU, or any retention percentage. So yeah, that's my perspective.
So thanks a lot for that. That was really interesting, especially, one of the points you raised is how they use the pregnancy tracker. And you also want to check if they're using the other things or not to understand if they're being retained. Because for you, retained is not just using that, but also using the other services. That means they like the app.
Yeah.
No, thanks a lot for that. That was really interesting. And that's why I kept you at the last, because I wanted to hear your view here. So
thank you.
I'm going to quickly go over to my second question. And I'm going to be starting with Kushal here. So the question is something coming from the first one itself. We talked about user paths and user journeys. They're getting more and more complex from different businesses as different businesses are going. Apps are adding many more layers, many more complications to it, more ventures to it. So when you look at these journeys and these user paths, especially when they've become so complex, what are the key user insights you're trying to derive? Like you look for those few things which, helps you monitor engagement. Is it something which is different from what you shared earlier? Maybe you can add a little bit more here.
I think, again, in principle, the fundamentals still remain same. But absolutely, so the user journey is becoming complex with the plethora of channels that are now available, and also users also demanding to be contacted in those specific channels, and everybody has their own affinity towards the channel. And again, when you go into the user journey itself, first when they interact with you, and then how do they end up making the order, then repeat order, and then so on. So it is a complex thing. So, but first I would to make sure we are able to address the problem at hand and add value to the user. I think first we need to understand, at least have a good framework. So like a life cycle framework, and RFM is one of them. There are other stuff that you can use. So need to understand what life stage the user is currently in and where you want the user to go. So that becomes your holy grail at that moment. And then what are the KPIs that matter for that stage? For example, if the life stage is, let's say, from 0 to 1, meaning they signed up and you want them to make the first order. Now, having a KPI of increasing basket size doesn't make sense. You don't have the benchmark to start with. So have relevant KPIs for each stage. And now those are the insights I would start looking at, that okay, people who are entering this journey and interacting with me and in this stage of 0 to 1, what are they doing, and how are the metrics talking, and what can I do there? And also at every stage, as I mentioned to start with, the channel affinity part, right? So understanding what are the channels that they are more inclined towards, which of the channels are clicking most for the users. Now, how do we drive them towards that? All that matters, and having a robust tool which can allow us marketers to do that, I think that also matters a lot. So now, how can I drive somebody into, let's say, a push notification flow when I know that okay, they are not doing great in terms of email engagement, and it can be maybe they're doing great with like WhatsApp engagement. So now, how do I make sure that okay, the system allows me to give that flexibility to drive them to that channel as soon as possible to make sure I'm getting more value from there. And of course, the conversion rates at each stage of the journey. Like I think initially when I had started like working on these lifecycle campaigns and all, like we went crazy with 10, 15 touch points and all that in a journey, and it goes to like decent cadence and all that. But many times it happens that like whatever you want the user to do, they usually do it by like 7 or 8 touch points over like 4 to 5 weeks. So what happens is the entire effort that you have put for 15 stages actually might not be giving any marginal delta. So now how do I optimize my resource allocation, my bandwidth allocation, to make sure I'm providing my journeys are optimal, my journeys are simple enough so that they are driving the maximum value they can. So those are some things that I look when I'm thinking from user journey point of view.
Thanks a lot for sharing that. I think with the framework part and keeping it simple by understanding different channels, and you kind of hit the nail on the head with that, just making your job easier. But just understanding what channels people prefer, and also catching them at the right stages, and then creating a different journey for each and every user. Thanks a lot for that. I'm quickly going to go to Vineeth now. Vineeth, if you can probably share your insights here, it'll be super nice.
Yeah, so from a path perspective, right, and I believe everyone here would agree that every business has a different way of approaching to their users and customers, and every vertical market in a different way. I'll be more specific towards coming from a B2C, B2B, and now working with app installation campaigns and stuff. I believe at the Asian Parent, we have been fortunate that we are literally part of a user's journey, and in all literal sense, to be very honest, right? Because a user only comes to us or come to our platform when they are looking for information, when they are in a stage which is like trying to conceive, pregnancy, or they are pregnant, or they have newborn kids, or they are a parent, right? So now this is where I feel like I've been fortunate from a marketing standpoint that this journey is kind of constant across all users, right? A person who is in the first trimester by default will go to second trimester and go on to a third trimester and become a parent, right? Now we from a product standpoint, what I feel is it's easier for us to build those journeys and map it out and build that user journey easily, right? Now but at that, while I say that it can be predefined, but it needs to be customized, because the requirement or the wants are changing, the need is changing at every user stage. Like a person who is on their first trimester would be looking for something else as compared to a person in the second trimester or a newborn kid's parent, right? So that's where I think the user journey or building a proper path comes into play for us. I would put it as addressing different segments of users differently and building a journey specific for them, which ensures the stickiness of the user to our product. Now, similarly, it was mentioned like as I said, right, all these can be done by keeping a close eye on the interactions and the activities that we see at different stages and how the user is engaging with our platform and our trackers. So it gives us like data becomes king, and then yeah, data becomes king in all of these conversations, right? I just want to add on to the user acquisition aspect, because we spoke about how do we retain them once they have been acquired, and Kushal did mention about source of traffic can be different as well. The user acquired by social media might be totally different from a user acquired from a Google search campaign or a UAC campaign. And what we see is the retention for these two might be different. So how we approach these platforms as well is based on the numbers that we see and how the stickiness that we see from the platform. And I believe that certain platforms has much better retentions as compared to the other one, because you need to do a better job of educating these users more about the product by doing push notification, building those user journey flows that we use your product basically for, and making sure that people are getting those nudges, those notifications at the right time, at the right moment. So that's how I would position myself on that. Yeah.
Thanks, Vineeth. Thanks for that insight. I'm going to go over to Rajeshwari. If you can share what are the things you derive from a user's journey, what are the key insights you look for? I think you're on mute, Rajeshwari. I'm really sorry.
Well, I think Kushal and Vineeth actually just said it all, you know. And I wish I had Asian Parent when I was going through that journey. So actually, to be honest, like you guys actually nailed it right on the way. In terms of user journey, you will have to know how are they reaching. I mean, when Vineeth pointed it out that, they could come from different various sources that they are coming from. And it's very important to actually have their own separate user journey or how they actually onboard with us, right? Today, we have also actually started doing a lot of things where we've introduced KYC in our system today. And those that are coming from the KYC, the onboarding from the KYC, we have a completely separate user journey, because we classify them as the most trusted ones, because we have verified them. The data is clean right now, which is quite rare in telco environment to be clean. So then we have a more trustworthy. We are able to do a lot more scoring on them, and we are able to bring them to a role, retention campaign, a lot more investment that we do on them. But on the other side, where we look into social ad campaigns, we still have the flaw. We still at times can't relate, to all the ad campaigns that we run on social ads. We can't relate those who are landing on our page. So I have the flaw in my environment. So that's something that we have to look with. I mean, I think that's where you have to look into it, actually, to correlate that part of the user journey as well. And yeah, that's what I wanted to share today. And the rest, Kushal and Vineeth just nailed it.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Rajeshwari. I know like some of these answers can, get repetitive, but like it would just be great to understand, from sector to sector, they may vary. Like I know Kushal had pointed out earlier that one of the question, which is the first question on engagement, wherein the North Star metric would remain the same for everyone, but still there can be certain variations from sector to sector. So, thanks for bringing that insight out. I'm going to go to Joshua now. So Joshua, it'll be great to hear from your point of view on this question.
Sure. Yeah, just to add on to what the rest have already said. I do think that we are starting to see apps very different from the past, with a lot of consolidation efforts happening. It also means there's a lot more super apps trying to do many things today. So maybe from a marketer's operational standpoint, what I would like to add is it's probably very common where you have a lot of individual business units that are fighting for the same customer's attention, and you are trying to use one app to do everything. What could possibly be a pitfall or an insight is that you may end up with a lot of people whom you acquire that download your app and don't do anything. And it's becoming more important to find out why, right? Because we're looking at optimizing things like customer acquisition costs, making sure these guys who come in actually do something. So what I really want to point out is that sometimes we need to not just look at what engages the customer, but also what disengages the customer. Maybe we shouldn't be forcing people to do certain things just because our app has such a feature. So really trying to invest more effort into figuring out why they're here in the first place. What is the first touch point that we want them to achieve, given as much as we know about them. These are things that actually become quite important as your feature set grows, as your product becomes more sophisticated, because you don't want to lose the customer simply by offering too much too fast.
Yep. Thanks a lot for that. Thanks for answering this question. I'm going to go over to the next question. So this is an interesting one. We're going to be starting with Vineeth here. So whenever the user is engaged, what is the first sign you look for? So what is the first sign for you when you realize the user's engaged, he wants to come back to the platform? And what are the red flags you look for a user who's about to churn? So, the extremities of a life cycle of a user on your app.
Right. Am I audible? Okay. Yeah. So as I said, I think we have an exception case over here, right? Because as I said, it's literally the journey that we are mapping out for the user. So retention is a byproduct of what you're offering your users. And as Joshua mentioned just now, it's trying to know what users are coming to you for, right? Rather than trying to give them what you have handy with you, it's trying to know why first of all, why did they download your app, right? And then trying to see what is it that is keeping them engaged. So now this is where, to answer your question, how do you identify an engaged user? It's easy to identify an engaged user, to be very honest. If you're closer to the data and if you're able to track every element or every other element on your platform, it's much easier to find a pattern that tells you that, hey, this user is way more engaged on my platform. So it could be like multiple sessions happening in within a day. It could be the number of times, the time that user is spending, or it could be the page views that is accumulated by a user on your platform, or it could be like a user is acting as an advocate for your platform, right? Like replying to comments on your social media and stuff. So it's all siloed reviews of how a user is engaged, but obviously you're not looking at one single user, you're looking at a collective pattern. So as I said, it's much easier to identify a pattern, to notice a highly engaged user. So obviously, talking about evaluating risk of churning, first looking at the pattern again, and then seeing if there is a decreasing trend in any of the usage of your product. So when we talk about decreasing in trend, this is where it's important that okay. Again, an example of pregnancy tracker. If I know that my DAU is at a certain level, and every out of that, 80% of the users are coming to pregnancy tracker on a daily basis, but all of a sudden that contribution tends to reduce. Now this is a flag to me, and I know that there is something happening here with my users. And then digging deeper into that and understanding why this engagement has dropped off. So first, you need to have those mechanism of being able to track all these touch points, and at the same time making sure that you're looking at the data on in and out and making sure you're getting enough information out of it. Having data is one thing, and analyzing and actioning on that is more important, right? So that's what I usually look at. Few other examples I would just add to that, because we are basically talking about the app. Other stuff that talks about churning and the risk of churning is the ratings that we see on our store listings. That also indicates, so let's say we have rolled out a update on our application, and all of a sudden on any given day we see that our ratings of 3 or below is increasing in that particular week. We know already that something is wrong, and people are not able to either upgrade, or people are not able to move on to the next upgrade that we have rolled out. So these are the kind of things that acts as a red flag for us. Even increased number of feedbacks, because we are a community. So we have these engaged community within our app, where if we start to see that people are starting to complain more, we are getting more feedbacks from our users, that's where we have our internal community team members who go in and ensure that these feedbacks are passed on to the product team, and actually ensure it could be a product requirement, it could be something that we are missing out in the user stage. That's very minimal, I would say, because we have already covered most elements of it. But most of the time, a risk of user churning is always tied back to a upgrade or some kind of product fixes that needs to be done. So that's predominantly most what we see for the Asian parent.
Cool. Thanks for that, Vineeth. I'm gonna go to Rajeshwari, if you can share your point of view here. You're on mute. You always forget that.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'll start off actually. I mean, like how Vineeth said as well, like, to identify whether the user is engaged or not is actually quite easier. Because if they are engaged with you, they would, from a telco perspective as well, they will be actually paying up your bills on time. And we actually track the minutes of usage and how long, I mean, their usage pattern, their transactions online and transactions with us in the network. So we look at all that. So that gives us quite an identity, whether they are actually quite a engaged user or not. But what we mainly look at is actually the red flags, right? The churn riskers. So in terms of the red flags, one of the most, we have actually started looking at, okay, when we first started doing churn analysis and churn modeling, we started with the very basic, saying that, okay, we'll look into the transactional behavior, which is the usage patterns, right? How long are you hanging on the phone? How long are you using your data? How long are you sending out SMSs and all those, the basic, telco services, right? So we started looking at that, and then we said that, okay, there's more to this, right? So we started also looking into the life cycle. First of all, the life cycle, where they actually move in and out. How frequently? Why are they moving in and out of the passive status? Why do they move into the passive status? Why do they allow that to happen, right? So that was quite an indicator today. We actually look into that. When they actually go, we try to save them at a point, right? We try to do a lot of campaigns to save them when they don't, before they reach even the passive status. But that is one of the key red flags that we look into, those who are actually in the passive mode, right? And then we actually started looking at, for the postpaid guys, we started looking at their contract expiry every time, that 2-year contract expiry. If that's going to be expiring, then we know that, okay, this is a high time that we do something about those of them. And then quite surprisingly, we've also seen a lot of people with the phone device types, these are red flags when they don't actually buy a new phone. It's like, why are they not buying a new phone? And, we try to, that would also, we would try to encourage them, because these guys also become a risk, in our system. But there's also a lot of attributes that we consider before saving and really doing a churn modeling, in terms of saving them or not. That's a separate story, but these are one of the weird red flags that we see in telco industry, your phone types that you use. So if you don't change your phone too often, we also think that you're a risk. And then also your location, right? Because typically in Malaysia, there are certain areas that we do have certain flaws in our coverage. So in those areas, sometimes the bandwidth is congested. So some of the red flag, that causes a lot of issues for us, a lot of raised customer complaints. And we know that day there's going to be a lot of dropouts. So these are, network monitoring is also another big red flag for us, an important factor for us to actually monitor how the network situation is, because that's going to impact us. And and from an external point of view, to actually look into the competitors from a telco perspective, the competitors to us, if the competitors bring down a new product or a new device, or they drop a price, they are running a better campaign, then that's also in terms of a red flag to most of our users. The chances of them putting out is high. So these are a few that we see. And one quite interestingly, something that's happened over the last 1 year, the post-pandemic, situation, is that we don't see them. We've actually noticed a lot of them who used to have multi-SIMs have actually dropped off, using only one SIMs now. So they're more a very more stringent behavior of those pattern where they used to just buy SIM cards and I like to have 2 SIM cards, 3 phones, 4 phones. That pattern has actually reduced significantly, quite surprisingly. Maybe because they've all given their phones, separately to their family members and the kids, but I don't know. So that has actually, previously multi-SIMs were actually quite a risk, quite a red flag, but we used to monitor them, because as long as the usage is there, we just monitor them. The tendency of them to actually, but now post-COVID, we see a lot of them dropping off the multi-SIMs. So that has become a red flag as well. And then we also see a very big drop in data usage. So a lot of people, they could be actually, they could have validity. They are not in dorm, they are not in passive, they are in active mode, but there's significant drop in data usage. Because they're home, they have Wi-Fi at home. So that is actually now is something that we are looking deeply into, because that's kind of an indicative that they're not really using as much, right? So that's one of those. So I think from a telco perspective, I could go on and on on this, but I'll stop here, giving you a high-level view of this. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. That was really interesting. I actually had one small question. You can probably just take half a minute to answer that. Yeah. So I was actually reading an article on telco trends. Our retention is usually higher in telcos, and it's easy to predict churn.
Right.
I wanted to ask, is there a particular age segment wherein the churn is the churn is higher, or that they're at a higher risk when it comes to telcos? Is there a particular age segment where you see higher churn?
No, not based on the age, because when we do the segment itself, we would actually segment them out in terms of the usage pattern to actually segment them on the age. But actually, the churn is they could come from. It's not age is not a factor. We don't see age as a factor. Yeah. So
I was just trying to understand that maybe at younger age or like people are more likely to change their telco provider.
Actually, it has become a habitual today in terms of the consumer behavior. People are not loyal anymore. No, it's not easy to keep them. Yeah. So
I hope it only stays to app usage, not to other things. So I'm quickly gonna go to Joshua now. So Joshua, it'll be great to hear your insights, and I'll end it with Kushal.
Yeah, actually, I really agree with the way Rajeshwari put it. Conceptually, I think we are familiar with hurdle rate, right, for new customer acquisition. What are a couple of things that they need to do before they demonstrate they fully understand the product and understand the value that they get out of it? So the concept of a reverse hurdle rate actually applies quite well to understanding signals that help us see who's starting to churn and such. But I think the really interesting thing here is that people could be leaving you for a variety of reasons, and it all points back to the fact that they're losing some sort of value from you. So maybe not a grocery example, but if I just look back at my previous company called Style Theory, we were in the business of renting dresses through a subscription model, and the main value proposition is that if you subscribe to this service, you can wear more clothes with the amount of money you put in than if you were to buy yourself outside. So essentially for us, value was very simple in a sense where if you broke even in your subscription, it would be because you managed to rent 6-8 dresses successfully within a month. So we start to look at people's trends, right? If they are beginning to show signs of churning, why is that the case? Is it because they've started to see a drop in their ROI of their subscription? Are they starting to see lesser dresses viable for them? Is repetition of the same old dresses something that is a problem that is making them feel like this is not worthwhile anymore? So the concept here is to try and dimensionalize as much as possible how your business drives value for the customer and figure out if anything is changing on that front. But of course, you could also fall into the circumstance where something is happening externally to the user that is completely out of your control. And maybe in Rajeshwari's example, they're giving their multiple phones away. But in my example here, maybe a woman is just going into pregnancy and those slim fit, colorful dresses just don't fit her anymore. So sometimes I feel looking deeply into churn scenarios could also give us good ideas to grow the product or to identify new segments, new opportunities that we actually have not thought of before. And ultimately, if we are looking at trying to capture these customers for a longer period of time, then we basically need to take care of them when the product stops showing value or giving value to them. So preempting churn is just the first step. Looking at the flags and dimensionalizing them is an important aspect, but what you do is also just as important.
Thanks a lot. One quick question. Thanks for sharing that example from the older company you were working in. I wanted to ask: is changing trend of basket size, or what is there in the basket, also an example of how you can predict churn? In your case, when it comes to NTUC, as to what the person was buying earlier and how?
Yeah, actually, great question, right? So basically, for groceries, there's no such thing as one brand loyalty, right? The truth is, we all shop from a variety of retailers, and there's going to be many reasons why we do so. Sometimes it's convenience, sometimes it's price, sometimes it's availability of the products that we want. So in answer to your question, where we really study the contents of a customer's cart or basket, we could see that, this person is starting to not buy his baby products from us anymore. And baby products is a really lucrative category. What's happening there? Usually these are signals we can pick up, but they usually point to something else happening in the external world where a competitor is just really bullish or aggressive in growing that particular category, and we are starting to see the side effects of that happening to our customers' cart. So yes, short answer is yes, there is a something that we can look into when cut quantities change or cut contents change, but usually points to some of these factors that are worthwhile to look into.
Thanks for that. Thanks. That was actually pretty insightful. Thanks a lot for sharing that. I'm going to quickly go to Kushal, if you can share your point of view here.
I think most of it is covered. I think all the fundamental things that show engagement, churn, I think you guys have touched upon: session, RFM, external, and all those things. Just like two maybe interesting points that I would want all of us to explore, and what I've seen in when trying to understand churn is the last order or the last interaction. I think churn is usually heavily indexed on that. Basically because it's also the recency effect, right? Like we remember like what happened in the immediate past versus like what happened 4 months ago. So I think that helps a lot to at least immediately start remedying this thing. So if, let's say, for example, in the last order, the delivery went like 60 days later for some reason. So that, okay, hey, something is bad coming out of it because that's not a good experience. So maybe we don't have to wait for, all other parameters to, show up and start showing the red flag, but we proactively address that churn. Another is the source of data, which is like very, very rich, and it's kind of like a little bit like far away from marketing in many organizations, the customer service data. So what's happening in the customer service data? Because what I see it as in two ways. One is, of course, you need to see that, okay, customers are coming with some problems, so you need to solve that, and marketing needs to be in sync. I also see it from a different angle, where these are the customers who basically want to give you the feedback, want to tell that, okay, hey, I want these improvements from your product because I really like your product and I want you to, make these delta changes. So that's like such a gold mine of, feedback, and those are the best customers you might have. So I think better take care of them and make sure that, okay, our marketing campaigns, our journeys when we're building, we have like a special, flow going just for them, showing extra love.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks a lot for ending that point. Those are actually really relevant insights, to be honest. Last question. We're going to keep it very short. So we have another 12 minutes, but we're going to keep some time for Q&A. So the last question is on what are some of the user retention tactics? What are some of the user retention tactics which have worked for you in the past? I'm going to start with Joshua. So maybe if you can give us a quick overview on what tactics you follow here.
So e-commerce in Asia is very competitive. So you normally see a lot of vouchers, promotions circulating, right? But I think short of doing that, there's a couple of things we can think about, right, to build retention. Maybe the first one is trying to understand how we can get people more deeply embedded into our brand's product and service ecosystem. Usually when you build more dependency on a particular service, it's harder to leave later on, because humans by nature are mostly lazy, and it takes effort to find something new, right? And we don't like to do research. So making you sticky is one way through building depth of the product consumption. I also would say never underestimate the power of referral program. In style theory, again, as an example, we really liked that a lot of people could tell us that, hey, I had a chat about your product with my friends and family, and they were super excited about it. So never underestimate the power of your brand popping up in a casual conversation as a way to build retention and loyalty. I think that's the holy grail of advocacy, right? When your customer acquisition cost is zero because someone else is doing it for you. I also think that today we see a lot of retention coming through formation of strategic partnerships. So if you think about loyalty programs, there's so many loyalty coalitions out there that string together an ecosystem of various industry partners, various verticals coming together to again give the customer a super huge offering that it's hard to leave. So in the NTUC world, there's Plus program, there's link points. You can use this all across food services, grocery, restaurants, even petrol. So all this connectivity and connectedness to expand the product offering, I think that's a good alternative to your typical product vouchers and promotions that we normally see.
Cool, thanks. So loyalty and referral love. So I'm gonna go to Kushal. So maybe you can also add your bit here on retention tactics.
Yeah, so there are some obvious things like Joshua mentioned, right? Like vouchers and everything. So they work for a certain extent, and after that you see that the impact actually they become less viable. I think the impact might be there, and there are aspects like personalization. How much are we able to personalize? First of all, are the do we have tools and technologies to do that? That's one. And also, do we have internal capabilities to do that? So even if I want to say, hi, first name, am I able to pull that information? And then go to the extreme extent where we start pulling from product feed and, their purchase data, maybe cart data and all that. So I think how are we able to personalize that and then deliver it, appropriately? And then also another thing is optimizing message frequency. Like many times it happens that people are very generous with free channels like email and push notifications. So I think we also need to understand like what is that optimal message frequency that we need to maintain by channel, and that also has a great impact on retention. Couple of other things would be on the supply side, especially from e-commerce point of view. So the supply side, like the assortment that we are able to provide, like Joshua mentioned, in the grocery business, if I don't get tomatoes in fair price, maybe I'll not go there because those are like fundamental like vegetables slash fruits for me. So maybe I'll never go there. So the assortment is definitely a key factor that helps a lot. One last thing, and this is like very, very far away from these things, is this is very internal, which is basically a constant feedback loop between the lifecycle team and the marketing team and the product team, because we are the first like frontline, especially in the digital world, who understand what are the frictions that the user is going through. Now, can I have that loop with my product team and give them almost real-time updates so that they optimize their backlogs and then update their feature release accordingly, so that we are able to give great value to the customers.
Thanks for the last point. It's basically greasing the wheels internally, right? You're getting everything in order. And you all have the same picture, which is interconnected between yours, and removing those silos. Thanks a lot for that. That's pretty interesting. I'm going to go to Vineeth now. And finally, we're going to end with Rajeshwari, who we started the session with.
Okay, I think, pretty much few like the generic stuff has already been covered. What I'll mention is, although we'll touch upon those elements as well, especially with the Asian parent, what I've observed and what we have seen works best for us. We take pride in our community. The community of parents that we have built, and the community of moms and moms to be, right? And they are our biggest advocates for making sure that the users who come into the platform are retained. Now, how do we do that? One big aspect is no questions, or we make sure there are no unanswered questions on our platform. So this is where the community feels welcomed. And it's actually curated by or moderated by our internal community members. But at the same time, it's also contribution coming from the existing community members who are genuine parents or who are actual parents in their life, right? So that's what adds value on retention. Apart from that, there are other elements that we take care of, which is giving them rewards or giving them reward points for all the actions that they take, which is encouraging them to take an action which is valuable for the business, but also for the user who is looking at it or making that action. So adding reward points, it's a twofold thing, right? One is it's giving more value to the user, who's doing that action. In return, I'll give you a quick summary of what we did recently. There was a poll that we ran, and that's one of the best thing that we could do, right? As in like running a poll in Indonesia where we were trying to understand about our moms persona. 60% of our moms are stay-home moms. And they love to come to our platform because of this community that we have, and they love to engage with other parents via the platform, right? They also love the fact that they get rewarded for the time they spend on the platform, and also they get rewarded in a form where we have partners onboarded, which allows them to redeem those reward points that they accumulate doing all these actions. So in a way, this is a win-win for both. One for the moms who are actually advocating our platform, and the partners who are trying to advertise this highly curated products that we want to showcase to these niche audience, which is moms and moms to be, right, or even parents. So that's how we make sure that there is a there is a flow of what do you call it? Everyone gets something and everyone wins from it, right? So above all, this is what we always look at, and that's how we retain our users across all the different life stages, I would say.
Cool, thanks a lot. Rajeshwari, it'll be great if you can add a quick point here, because we have another 4 minutes left and probably just end with one more question at the end. You're on mute again.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So yeah, I think retention tactics that worked for telco over the last few years is actually just giving out phones. And the moment you say that's going to be a phone with a contract, and then you have a long queue out there, it works. It really works. It works with newly launched devices. Now we have also we used to work with iPhones. Now it is working for all the phones, even up to the level we are giving out 99-cent phones. So it works. But then we started doing more than that. We started doing more than that in the sense that we started looking into microloans. We started giving back. This is all the high level perspective is that we are trying to verify. Go into varied businesses besides telco services, right? Just not the core business. We are going on into different sides of the businesses. So this is part of those activities that we take. We started giving out micro loans, and this is like, for SMEs to actually embark on their businesses. So this is actually packaged together with your products, with our core products. So these are some things that we started doing. Credit loans were always there, for device loans were always there, but that's also something that I think telco should focus on, like how Joshua mentioned earlier. I think e-commerce is trying to do this, but I'm not saying that, hey, you know what, telco should also join the bandwagon, but I think telco has a privilege here, that we know where our customers are, we know what you're doing, where you're staying, we know everything. I mean, we know to a certain level of where you're located, right? So telcos have that capability of saying that, hey, you know what, you're back home, this is where you're located, these are the kind of lifestyle that you should be looking out near your house. You have your coffee nearby, you have that nearby, that particular tool, actually really personalize that particular offer to you. That is something that telco is not doing today, but something that they should really do. And that's what I think. Okay. Right. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for that. So it's basically building a community.
Yeah.
Really sorry, we have another 1 minute left. So there are around 4 questions. It'll be great if 4 of you can probably stay back. Obviously, you can close the camera, but help me answer these questions. There are around actually 5 questions. So it would be great if you guys can answer it. Not on the screen. Maybe you can just text some of our invitees, attendees who asked these questions. Thanks a lot for the session today, Vineeth, Kushal, Rajeshwari, Joshua. It was very interesting. There were some very interesting highlights as well, especially around retain engagement, the metrics you're looking at, how it is stakeholder relevant. So we're going to take some of these points back